In a recent documentary on the oceans, David Attenborough featured a number, 3% of effectively protected, marine protected area. 3%, and that number shows up a lot of places. It's often uncited, but we are the genesis for that number, and how we reach it is what I wanted to talk a little bit about before we dig into the website today. So the Marine Conservation Institute has been around. This is our 30th year. We started the MPAtlas project in 2012. Our aim was to visualize and track strong protections on the ocean, those that were originally a no-take area, implemented on the water, and really feature these well-protected areas out of kind of the noise of marine protected areas reporting, which is very broad in scope. As most folks know, there's a target, this 30 by 30 target that's been identified. Many countries have adopted this on a global level. Many have adopted it on a
Beth,
national level.
just a pause. Are you sharing your screen right now?
Oh, shoots, did I not share it?
Not yet.
Dum dum. Hang on. All right, let's go back so you can all see it. Sorry, I thought you had done that initially. So, yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, now we can see it. Yep, great.
All right. Yep. So this is the quote that I was talking about. And this here is the first slide, but I do want to point out the QR code on here. For those who've not been to the MPAtlas website before, this QR code will take you there. So the Global Biodiversity Framework and the 30 by 30 target is really, really well known. I do want to point out it's one of 23 targets. There are other targets that aim for restoration and for sustainable use and even fishing specific objectives. Target 3, this 30 by 30, is really meant to highlight areas with conservation outcomes and biodiversity benefits. But how do we measure this progress? Currently, the official repository for marine protected areas and terrestrial protected areas is what's called the World Database on Protected and Conserved Areas. If I accidentally call it the WDPA, it's because that's what it was for years and years. They have changed the name earlier this year to incorporate a new type of Target 3 area called an Other Effective Conservation Measure, which is OECM for short, in case you hear it. However, the primary indicator for this target is actually the area, two-dimensional area of ocean covered. It's not quality, even though the target itself speaks to the need for quality protection. And we do know that not all MPAs are created the same. In practice, MPAs can be on a very broad array of types of restrictions, things that are allowed, size, governance, how they're designed, who enforces them, who manages them. It's a very, very broad umbrella. And how you make these decisions along the way very much impact the amount of protection or the amount of conservation benefit you're going to get from these areas. So a few years ago, we co-authored what's called the Marine Protected Area Guide, the MPA Guide. What this was meant to do was simply building off the IUCN definition of an MPA, define further the stages of establishment in marine protected areas, whether they are legally designated or fully implemented, different levels of protections based on the type of direct human impact that are mitigated, and then linking these to the likely outcomes. So by looking through the scientific evidence and supporting the type of conservation benefits that each of these steps would result in from what we already knew has worked. So the stages of establishment range from anything that's just proposed and committed. This is super broad. It can be official or unofficial. It could be an NGO or a government or a local community that's working towards this area. The designation, this step of legally defining an area, is when most areas are reported to the WDPA. But that designation step is often where they set up kind of the framework for how you're going to implement it. And the step of on the water protection can take place years later, based on how it was set up, how it was enforced, political will. Lots of things can affect the length of time it takes for an MPA to really go into place on the water. And it's at that point that sites start imparting these conservation benefits. There's a final step called active management. So if you're doing an MPA correctly and you really want to know if it's working, you need to evaluate that from time to time. And this process needs to involve updating or evolving your strategy to reach your goals. And level of protection is also a broad range. Things with high levels of human impact might be protection for certain parts of an ecosystem, but maybe not everything. It could be achieving its goal, but not fully encompassing all of the habitat area. And as you address different impacts and mitigate them, you reach higher and higher levels of protection, where you get to what most folks know of fully protected area because it's easy to see. Nobody's usually allowed in it. There's no extraction at all. But highly protected can allow for some extraction, but it's usually so minimal in impact that it reaches the same level of biodiversity benefits that a fully protected area is. So you'll often see fully and highly protected kind of put together because they're analogous in their outcomes. So the level of protection is based on 7 human impacts. It's important to note that it doesn't address things outside of the boundaries, even though we acknowledge that things outside the MPA can very much impact what happens inside, but it's a lot harder to mitigate those things. Things like climate change, warming, acidification are really difficult to, and really not the appropriate thing to be mitigated by an MPA. This is a place-based area where human activity is what you can control. But being able to mitigate direct human impact does help these sites deal with these kind of outer pressures that are harder to directly mitigate through an MPA. These when we are looking at these different activities, what we look at is not just the regulation that or what should be happening, but rather the degree of the impact of what's allowed. Each zone is assessed separately, and we make a point of searching external sources of information. So for example, a marine protected area that is in an EEZ where things like bottom trawling are already prohibited would obviously not address bottom trawling because it's already covered in an adjacent or overlaying jurisdiction. So we try to look at those things. We look at research articles, white papers and reports, things like that, as well as activity databases like Global Fishing Watch to really get a bead on what's happening on the water. And this is where third-party verification comes in. So ideally, we would have somebody with local knowledge or regional knowledge to come in and ground truth these and verify these assessments. And on that matrix, if you think of level of protection and stage of establishment as a matrix, this kind of upper right-hand corner where things are implemented on the water or actively managed and at a fully or highly protected level are where we see the greatest linkages to biodiversity benefits and conservation outcomes. A couple of years ago, we led a study to kind of set a baseline for where we are according to the MPA guide in our global reporting. The largest 100 MPAs actually at the time made up a little more than 90% of all the area reported to the world database. And through our analysis, we actually covered 7.3% of the global ocean. A quarter of what we looked at remained unimplemented. So of the, at the time, I think it was about 8% was what was reported. Yeah, 8.2%. A quarter of that was still unimplemented. So it was legally designated, but not yet in place. And another third of it was actually allowing some type of human activity that is incompatible with the goals of conservation, things like bottom trawling, oil and gas exploration, things of that nature. And so what you see is when the World Database of Protected Areas is brought up, they have tons of coverage, land coverage. They now have in yellow those OECMs I was talking about. But if you look at ours, it's focused only on the ocean. And within that, we look at the stage of establishment and the level of protection per the MPA guide to try and help kind of parse out these stronger levels of protection. Throughout our website, we really focus on the fully and highly protected number. We currently have more than 1,600 MPA zones assessed and published to our website. This accounts for 90% of the global reported area. Where we lose resolution is on the regional and national level, where we work with partners to try to create and assess areas to kind of improve that resolution. And we're happy to work with we'll talk more about it later, anybody who wants to see better assessment in an area you work in. We actually have more than 3,000 assessments on the back end in various levels of process. Some are awaiting verification, some are just drafts. We just haven't gotten that far. We have 44 countries, at least partially or fully assessed, with another 57 in progress. Our data is open access, and we like to contribute it. We have a number of ways for you to access the data, which we will be talking about next. And that brings us to the platform. This is what the home page looks like right now. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can tell you more through kind of some screen sharing what the website's got for tools. So I'm going to stop sharing. Perfect. And introduce my colleagues. Also on the call with me today, we have Jessica MacCarthy and Nikki Harasta, both of whom will be showing you portions of our website. So I'm going to pass it to Nikki, who is going to share some of those tools with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. And thank you for everyone who came to this webinar today. It's nice to see so many people in attendance, and hopefully we have a few things that we can share and you can walk away with something that you didn't know before. So if you're familiar with MPAtlas at all, you probably have gotten about this far and just gone straight to the interactive map. But I wanted to first share a few other features and downloadable files for you guys. So this is our homepage, MPAtlas.org. It is in the chat. If you wanted to go there, you can click along with me if you like. And the first thing you'll see is our 3.3% figure. So this is the amount of fully or highly protected area and implemented area per our assessments. So maybe this isn't what exists, but this is what we've gotten to so far. And it is comprised of about 90% of what's reported, as Beth mentioned, with the top 100 largest MPAs. So it's a pretty good baseline for what is out there at the moment. We also have the WDPA's figure here. We pull it monthly. It is time-stamped at the bottom, just for you to know how up to date it is. And ours is also time-stamped under here. You can see when our last edit or update was made. We'll usually have some kind of spotlight on a current event here. A little bit of background on the MPA guide, and these pages link to more resources and information if you wanted to know more. Again, this is the framework that we apply to sort of define what protected means. I did see that question in the chat. And this is sort of what distinguishes our data set from the WDPA. All right, a little bit further, and this is where you will sort of get a snapshot of global progress towards 30 by 30. We have assessed 12.4%, and you might be like, but the WDPA only reports 9.8%. This is because we also include proposed and committed areas when possible. And sites typically don't get incorporated into the WDPA until they've been officially designated. So we will work with regional partners to get boundaries for these figures, although sometimes when boundaries aren't available, we'll also report them as a point. I will expand on that a little bit later if you're confused, don't worry. Yeah, so we don't start talking about level of protection until we do actually see MPAs reaching this implemented or actively managed level or stage of establishment. But then you can see how many are designated, how many are proposed. And yeah, this is a good snapshot for that. If you wanted to download this global data, you just click this and it will give you a CSV instantly, giving you the breakdown by protection level and stage of establishment. We also have this description tag for field definitions, a citation for data stamp or a timestamp for the data, more information on how to reach out to us, and of course, a citation if you do use our data. There's also a brief definition here of the stage of establishment and level of protection if you're not as well versed in it as some of us might be. And then a little further is a snapshot of the largest MPAs. The largest MPAs do make up the majority of this 3.3% figure, so this is why they're highlighted a little bit more here. You could see the top 10 on the side, but if you wanted to see more, you can click this figure here, and this will give you the full list of the top 100. So just to clarify, because there's so many percentages going around all of the time. So this is ordered from percentage of that 3.3% that it makes up. So Raw Sea region is one of the largest highly and fully implemented MPAs, and it makes up 16.1% of the 3.3% highly and fully protected MPAs, just to clarify that. You can change the view on this by clicking these filters. If you wanted to see all protection levels that are implemented, you can also click here. If you wanted to see all stages of establishment, you can select this. And these filters will change what is downloaded here as well. So just to show you a quick example, this is what you would download. I also wanted to point out the difference between a zone and a site. So Beth mentioned that we assess each zone separately. That's because some zones have different objectives and different human activities allowed in them. And this is true for Rossi. So if we look at Rossi, for example, it's designated as one site. It has multiple zones with different management objectives, but they will all be linked to Rossi through its site ID, and then they will all be assigned a separate zone ID. You can compare this one to Papahanaumokuakea National Marine Sanctuary, which is a single zone site, so it won't have a separate site ID. It only has its zone ID. And this is what we mean in column B when we say top level unit. If it says zone, that means that it is a single zone MPA. Again, we've got some field definitions. There's a few more in here, so make sure to check these out. And a citation here for you. Okay, another useful data set, if you hover over MPA statistics at the top and click country ranks, this will give you the breakdown by country. This list will default to show the percentage in each country's EEZ, that is in highly and fully protected area, and it sorts from high to low. It also defaults to show all 213 countries and territories. If it has a gold star next to it, it means that it has achieved or surpassed 30% in fully and highly protected area. If it has a half star, it means it's achieved or surpassed 10% in fully and highly protected area. And also, we do note the country's commitments where they're known and relevant. Okay, and then aggregate by sovereign. So some people like to think about 30 by 30 differently. For example, the United Kingdom would count all of its overseas territories and waters towards its 30% goal. So you have the option to sort based on what number you're looking for. If you do choose to sort by sovereign and not by related countries and territories, just know that the related countries and territories will disappear from this list. So just to show you, Cocos Island, for example, is here, but it disappears from this list if you aggregate because it shows up under Australia instead. You can also sort instead of percentage of EEZ and fully highly, you can just sort by its total area, high to low. You can also look at all protection levels that are implemented. And you can also sort by name if that's easier for you. If you wanted to sort low to high, you can just click the filter twice, and that will change the filter for you. Okay. Yeah, and then again, you can download this list. It will be altered based on what you select. And I'm just going to show you quickly an example of this data sheet as well. I will point out that just because, I'm going to go back to this really quick. So just because a country might only have 0% here doesn't necessarily mean that they have 0 MPAs. It could mean that we just haven't gotten to it yet. So we do report the percentage of marine area that we have assessed and that we've gotten to. And at the end of this table, you can also see how much of the EEZ has been reported to the WDPA. So you can tell if it's 0% because they have nothing or nothing reported to the WDPA, or if it's 0% because we just haven't gotten to it yet. I also wanted to point out that we do have the conservation targets included in this sheet as well, if you like. Descriptions, field descriptions, citation tab, that's a basic for every sheet we have. Okay, and then if you wanted to learn more about specific country, you can either just click it or you can search up here in the search bar. We'll just click. So at the top, you'll see some key figures, the total marine area, the percentage and total area that we've assessed so far, the percentage in implemented and fully highly protected that is contributing towards this effective 30 by 30 goal, and the date stamp of its most recent edit or assessment. You get a progress bar at the top, showing how close it is to its 30 by 30 goal, and we also do have its commitment under here, just for reference. Not every country has agreed to 30 by 30, so it is relevant to know. And then if you click on this map, this will enable you to see the entire country's EEZ in isolation. It's nice, it's helpful. You can take a screenshot to discuss sort of effective conservation in a country. We have a legend here. It goes away if you just click it. And then just to point out, we do also project all of the MPAs reported to the WDPA on our map. So if you see it just in brown here, that means that we haven't assessed it yet. If you click details, that's how you get back to the country page. And then you have a little snapshot here of the number of zones and area in each level of protection. Also, if you wanted to view the country's WDPA page, we have a direct link for each country here. Okay, and then this is the list of all of the MPAs that we have assessed and published. We have this stage of establishment and overall level of protection score, and activity level protection scores are available in download for the entire database. So I'll just show you quickly an example. So, yep, this is about what you get. you'll get the stage of establishment and the level of protection. If you wanted to know the breakdown by activity, you have to download the whole database, or you could ask us directly for it, and we'll be happy to get that to you. And that's something that Jess will touch on a little bit later. Okay, and then if you wanted to see an MPA's assessment page, you can either click on it, or again, you can search in the search bar up here. At the top, you'll get its designation, its country, and its total marine area. This one is particularly large. And then you'll see its stage of establishment. We also do include each date that it has reached each stage if we know it and if it's relevant. Not all of them go through this proposed stage. And then if you hover over each one, you'll get a little reminder and a definition of what each of these stages mean. Its overall level of protection will be here. Again, if you click on the map, you can see it in isolation. And then we've just got some brief area information here. So this will tell you the amount of the MPA that is in Chile. This is because some MPAs overlap with multiple EEZs. The amount of the zone that is marine, that's because some MPAs overlap with terrestrial area. And then you'll see the percentage of the protected marine area in the country and the percentage it makes up of the total global designated protected area. This is a very large one, I will say. Most of them don't really hit the decimals, but this one does. And then finally, you'll get to its full assessment and level of protection breakdown. So you'll see the assessment date, its status, and its stage of establishment again here. You'll see what version of the MPA guide it was assessed with. Right now, we only have version 1.0, but we do expect this to be updated and iterated as better science comes out and informs effective MPAs. Overall protection at the top, and the breakdown of each activity will be here. Again, if you just hover over, this will give you a definition of if you want to know what is a minimal fishing level, and you don't know off the top of your head, like some of us crazy people do who interact with the MPA guide every day, then that's useful to sort of know how it fell out. This one's quite simple because it's really well protected MPA. At the bottom, you'll see some of this section for affiliated reports. This is for if this assessment was completed in the process of a scientific publication. So this one was a part of our top 100 paper that got the global baseline. The RBCS, this was a precursor to the MPA guide. So all of these criteria are included in the MPA guide, and the MPA guide has a couple more. So this is just sort of this actually, if you complete an MPA guide assessment, this is a bit of low-hanging fruit and could be useful for some other metrics. It is what we use to assess activity level in our blue parks. We'll get to blue parks later. If you're not familiar with blue parks, we'll touch on it. This MPA zone management information is mostly metadata pulled from the WDPA, although the protected area type and stage of establishment are pulled from the MPA assessment. Associated documents is a key section here. This is where we will upload documents that we've used to assess the MPA. So it's useful if you're curious where certain scores have come from. We do try and pull directly from regulation language as possible, although there are times that, as Beth said, we'll pull from online databases, sometimes from word of mouth from local partners. But this will kind of get you a head start. I also just wanted to point out that it is important we have these documents here and that we timestamp everything, so that people know that like this is a snapshot in time. We do these by hand, and things change in marine policy all the time. So if you are maybe you have a specific expertise or knowledge of a given MPA or of country regulations on the whole, and you would like to make a correction, or if you see an MPA that we don't have yet that you have information on a management plan for, we love collaborating with people, and we do encourage you to reach out and email us. All of these will take you there. We also have contact us. This will take you directly to our info@mpatlas.org email. And that goes directly to us, and we do check it every day, and we will respond to you. The last thing I'll point out is that there are these tabs at the top for ease of navigation because these specific MPA assessment pages do get a little bit long. Okay. So finally, to the MPAtlas. Some of you may be familiar with this page, some of you may not be. So I'll just give a quick overview of the different features we have here. So on the left is a breakdown of of how many zones are in each category. That also goes for protection level. This shows you how many zones we have that have blue park status. So this would be useful for a variety of different analyses, depending on what your research interests are. If you just hover over a site, it's going to show you the site, the zone. Let me find one that's a multiple. I'll show you the MPA site, MPA zone. And this is for the MPA assessment. And then below the line, it will also show you what's imported from the WDPA. If you want that layer to go away, all you have to do is check this box, and then you will only see MPA guide assessments. Just depends on what your interests are. And then if you click on an MPA, its site and zone will show up here with a few details. So the site will show you the number of zones. This one has 2. And we clicked on the marine reserve. That's why this one popped up. Since I've already shown you a zone assessment page, I'm quickly just going to show you what a site assessment page looks like because it is different. It similar to a zone page, it will still have the area reported and the implemented fully highly protected percentage and this progress bar here. This is all pretty much the same. And below here is when it starts to look a little bit more like a country page. It will list its associated zones and just kind of give you a snapshot of what the overall score is. And then also just to point out, this is a Blue Park awardee. So if a site is a Blue Park awardee, it will say so here. For those who don't know, Blue Parks is another initiative of Marine Conservation Institute that recognizes outstanding MPAs that meet the Blue Park standard. If you wanted to learn more about what the standard is, there's links to it here. There's links to, you can see what all the Blue Parks are here. If you think that you know of an outstanding MPA, you can even nominate it. We do yearly cycles. And if you wanted to learn more about Blue Parks, we are having a webinar in July. Okay. So back to this page really quickly. One thing that is cool about our map is that you might notice that as I shift in and out, the URL changes. That's because the URL will capture any interactions that you have with the map. This also goes for filters. So let's say you only wanted to see all of the fully and highly protected areas. And let's make the WDPA go away. And you wanted to zoom specifically on Pitcairn Islands. If you just copy the URL, this saves the view that you have, or you can send this to someone else so they can have the same map view as you. And then the last thing I'll point out is at the bottom here, if there aren't boundaries available for a proposed MPA, you'll basically, oh, let me unclick this one so you can see more. It'll show up as a point, and that's basically what this one is for here. Okay. Uh, if you're interested in high seas MPAs, you can navigate directly to it by hitting Explore Marine Protection and clicking on the high seas, or by typing high seas in the search bar. This sort of shows up as a country at the moment. But we do have all of those currently proposed and designated ones here. There are even some ones that are actually implemented. And we do have answers to frequently asked questions on our FAQ page. You can find it here at the top of the navigation tab. Yeah, this is basically just, we do get questions often. Um, this is a complex, world of percentages and the MPA guide and what does protection mean. So a lot of those questions can be answered here. If anything can't be answered, though, again, just reach out to us at info@mpatlas.org, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so that's pretty much it for our tools we have here. I'm going to hand it off to Jess now to talk a little bit more about data contribution and download.
Thanks, Nikki. And thank you everybody for being here. So Nikki's given us a great tour of the website itself, and I'm going to try to keep this quick so we have time for questions, but I want to talk a little bit about the database that's behind this whole website. So Nikki's going to navigate us over to our data download page. So if you go to About, you can go down to Data Download. All of our published data, so that's all of the data that's visible on our website, is open access and available for download. So you can just click to this page and Nikki can scroll down and show you. There's just a very simple little form that you can fill out. And you can choose the data type that you want to download. So you can download it just as a CSV in the tabular format, or you can download the geospatial geodatabase file. And once you fill that out, there's a little button at the bottom that says proceed to download. If you click that, another page will just open up that directly gives you the ability to download the data. So it's pretty quick and simple. And along with the data, you do get our citation information, our metadata, everything you need to actually use the data. I will note, just because we've had some confusion, when you download the geospatial data, you do get the attributes along with it. The assessment data is in that. You don't need to download both the CSV and the geospatial data and merge them together or anything. It's all right there. We do also have an API. You do have to email us to get access to that, but there is information on this page about it. And again, our email address. So you can email us and request use of the API if that's a better way for you to access the data. And one more note, I know we've talked about this several times, but our data set, so what you'd be downloading, is not all of the MPAs globally. If you want that, you'll have to go to the WDPCA. But our data set includes the boundaries and the assessment information for everything that we've assessed so far. So that's what you're getting when you download our data, is our assessment data. And we do have data terms and use on here, so feel free to click to those and read those if you have any questions about how our data can be used. And again, you can always reach out to us if you have any questions about how to use the data. We just do always ask that it's appropriately cited, and if you've used it, we love to know how. We love a copy of the publications or wherever the data is being used. So that's how you can get access to the data. I'm also going to have Nikki click back to the atlas one more time. And again, in that same About section, you can scroll down to Contribute to MPAtlas. And this page tells you about how you can actually put data into our database. So as Beth and Nikki have both said, we work with many data partners, and we also seek external verification as much as we can for any of the assessments that our team has done. Our assessments are also a snapshot in time. So we also welcome information updates on the MPAs that are already on our websites that have been assessed. If you see something and you have more recent information that you could give us. So all that said, we welcome data contributions in a variety of ways. If you are interested in applying the MPA guide, this page here first gives you a bunch of resources to learn about the guide and how to use it. It has the actual scientific publication, it has a user manual, it has expanded guidance, the decision tree, everything you could really need to dig into the MPA guide is right here for you. And then you can email us to try to get your data into our database. So what we've been working with to help us aggregate all of this data from different sources, we've built an online data entry platform. So if you want to contribute data, you email us. We'll get you set up on the data portal with an account. We can give you a quick tour of how to use it, how to put your data in. And that's how your data would essentially go into our database. I will note, we could talk more about it, in one-on-one conversations, but I do want to note that all data contributions will remain unpublished. They will not go onto our live website until the data provider specifically says that they are ready for that data to be published. So if you're using our data entry platform kind of as you're doing your assessment and analysis, it's not automatically going to go to our website because you put it in that database. We do have data verification, data QA, QC processes, and will not publish your information until you're ready for it. We're actually in the process of rebuilding that data portal. So we're trying to make it a bit more user-friendly, add some additional functionality to it, and we're hoping it will be ready soon. So we actually do plan to have another separate webinar about the data entry portal and contributing to the database in the fall. So stay tuned for that. But that is how you contribute. All right. So we'll be leaving it there for now. I do just want to say a quick thank you to all of our funders and specifically to Astute Bruce, Brandon Ward, as well as Tara Star Marvin, who have been working with us to build this website and build the data entry portals. We could not do it without them, as well as all of the data contributors that we've had thus far, because this is a massive job and we could not do it alone. If you have any, obviously we'll answer some questions here, but if you think of questions later or they're too much to ask now, all of our email addresses are there. Feel free to reach out to us. And if you're interested in contributing data, we would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Beth. This was fabulous to learn more and get all the details. And we got some hands clapping. Actually want to sort of turn it back to you. You've had a chance to see all the questions that have come in on the chat and the Q&A. Are there any you particularly want to address? There were lots of questions about assessments and incorporating them. Were there any you particularly wanted to start with to address?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute that fast. Can you repeat your question? Sorry, I was
Were there
reading the
now
chat.
that
I
you
shouldn't have.
right now that you've seen a lot of the questions that have come in, were there any questions you particularly wanted to address
Yeah.
regarding assessments right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I think we got to a few of them. I know we discussed, somebody asked about the WDPA layers, but someone asked specifically how frequently we pull from them. So we do pull monthly from the WDPA. It's worth noting that each assessment is a time-stamped assessment. So what we don't do is if a change happens on the WDPA, sorry, I will one day call them the WDCPA, I swear. So updates on their end are not automatically updated on our end. They're flagged, and capacity, as we get to them, we can go back and update them. Sometimes it's a really minor change to a boundary that's not a real high impact change. But we do pull from them because they update monthly, so we update monthly. There is sometimes a little bit of a lag that we don't update at the exact same week they do. So occasionally you'll see our numbers just kind of out of step for a minute, but generally the WDPA layer, the reference layer, and the numbers are direct pass through that come from each monthly update from them. So that is automatically done. And then there was somebody who asked about if it's available for the Indian Ocean. The parts that we have assessed for the Indian Ocean are included in the published data set. So you can pull that out and select by country if you want to. And if you know more than what we have, reach out to us because we'd love to continue to improve that region's coverage of assessments. I do want to note, and it's not the focus of this presentation, but each assessment can take a long period of time to do. And so they benefit from human contributions. We're always welcoming folks who want to come in and help us in an area that you have expertise in to improve the data. Also, because we do timestamp it, so if you see something that you know has been updated, you can always reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to work with you to keep that data updated. So those are two that caught my eye. Did you see any others, Sarah, that you wanted to?
Well, we've got several sort of big picture ones towards the end, which we could switch over to, but I wanted to make sure that you sort of a lot of
Yeah.
the
Yep.
more
So, and
how the
then somebody
tool
asked
works.
about
Yeah.
minimal
From
and
there.
incompatible being grouped together in the results. Yes, we do that. You can use the data set itself to download and seek out, or you can click on things. It's just overwhelming when you create too many options, and minimally and incompatible tend to share a lot of, it's really difficult to parse those two out in a lot of cases. And our focus is fully and highly protected, so we tend to focus on those. And the difference between a minimally protected and incompatible aren't ones that we tend to worry too much about unless we're doing a direct analysis on those data sets, just because it's hard to focus on every single aspect. So somebody else asked if there's a set schedule for reassessments, and how long is an assessment valid? That is a really, really good question. We uh, don't unless we know about it. So somebody flags the update for us. That's why we timestamp everything. So did you guys, Jess or Nikki, see any other questions you wanted to make sure we answered before Sarah picks up a few of those at the bottom?
I think you hit most of them, but I'm still scrolling through. So Sarah, feel free to
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
ask away if you haven't seen anything.
I'm going to combine two questions. One was whether there are any efforts to assess and include levels of compliance for each MPA. And another was asking whether if you've thought about considering monitoring results in the assessment. So about including other aspects in the assessments in the results.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We, in a lot of cases, the stage of establishment is um, is kind of assessed using some of what we call the MPA guide called them enabling conditions. And it's not to minimize the importance of enforcement or compliance or monitoring or any of those things, but certainly they play into that. And so in some cases that comes through in our stage of establishment. Like if we're not seeing any enforcement or monitoring, it may come through the stage of establishment by us kind of deciding it's really just not implemented on the water yet. There is no real formal way to do that. Although we know that that's important, it's a case by case basis on how and when these sites are really enforced. They're capacity driven, they're community driven. So it's really hard to just put a checkbox and say everything has to reach this specific point for us to consider it, monitored or enforced, because that looks different in every single one. So we do look at them, but we don't have a formal checkbox for them. Nothing's really been created to allow us to do that. Do you guys have anything else to add to that point?
Yeah, I would just quickly add that I think to answer the question in part, we're not directly looking at or analyzing the results of ecological monitoring for these assessments. The way the MPA guide works is really looking at, is it designed in a way to be set up to likely achieve the benefits? And something it's something that we can do, relatively efficiently on this global scale. Looking at, ecological monitoring data is intensive analysis that we have to do on, a site-by-site basis. And not very, very important, but not the goal of, what we're trying to do with this framework. So that's not what we're looking at in this case. Although if we do see them, it is something we would consider.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Moving on to another question. It starts, great presentation, Beth and Nikki and Jessica, and kudos to MCI for this important contribution. I'm wondering, with all these refinements and new data analysis tools, whether we will soon be able to look at MPAs and OECMs and how well they protect against non-extractive stressors, tourism overuse, water quality, lack of measures to increase local resilience against climate change, and admittedly a different class of stressor, lack of public awareness and political will to conserve. Many MPAs aim to address these things and may be effective in these domains, but may not have large areas that are fully protected.
Jess, I'm gonna let you answer that. I was answering another question.
Yeah, sorry. I was just rereading the question because there was a lot there. It's a really good question though. And I will say that some of those things are addressed in the assessments that we do. For example, tourism use is considered in the MPA guide. Um, Water quality is not directly one of the activities that we look at, but some of the activities that would impact water quality are considered in the assessments. So some of those things are already considered. Things like lack of, public awareness and political will. We do try to consider those in the stage of establishment because that's really impacting if the MPA is actually implemented. If no one knows it exists, then the regulations probably aren't being followed. It's probably not even implemented yet. So although again, like those aren't, some of those aren't direct check boxes or yes or no questions, they're kind of built into the framework and something that we consider in the stage of establishment and level of protection. That's not to say we couldn't do it better, as we have to have, sorry, that was not coherent, but as we have more science and more ability to update this framework, I think a lot of those things are pieces that we could, flesh out more and incorporate into the guide more directly.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Another question, is MPAtlas or anyone else thinking about MPA effectiveness in terms of outcomes, such as recovery of fish populations, restoration of trophic webs, or biogenic habitats?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we can't we're a pretty small group. We do provide our data through other platforms. I pointed out to somebody else in the Q&A that our data is included in the SkyTruth 30 by 30 tracker. It's another tool if you haven't found it that does overlay our information with habitat areas and lots of other types of ecosystem and habitat features. So if you want to go look over there, that's a good way to take a peek at that. There is also some work going on right now to further bolster the linkages between fully and highly as the MPA guide defines them to outcomes. So for right now, it's likely outcomes, but being able to point to actual outcomes, we have a number of colleagues that we're working with to run that analysis as well. So yeah, we are doing that and happy to work with others that want to do the same. So thank you, Mark.
Okay, great. Let's see. I think are there any remaining in the Q&A to cover?
I think we got that one, we got that one, and we got that one. If I think we answered and we didn't, you guys, you can also just email us directly. Happy to expand on any of these. So yeah, and then the green list question came up a couple times. We've reached out to Sue. We do have an analysis. There's some recent work done by another colleague with Sea and Shore Solutions that did an analysis of the green list and the MPA guide as a crosswalk. So happy to loop back up to anyone that wants to know more about that analysis and put you in touch with Katie and or give you our workup on that as well. I think that's everything.
All right. Good work, everyone.
Oh my gosh, it's 3 minutes to spare and give back everybody.
Well, I'm actually going to go one that came in. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about it that you did answer in the Q&A. When are you expecting to reach full assessment coverage of the MPA status quo?
I'm expecting to die or retire before this is done. Not because I'm skeptical that we could do it, but simply it's hopefully going to be a database that continues to grow. We also have OECMs coming on. There is an OECM guide paper in review right now, and obviously we intend to incorporate that. Somebody asked us in the chat, I think, about why our name isn't the Marine Conservation Areas Atlas, and I said, 14 years ago, there was only MPAs. We're considering a rebrand, but everyone knows MPAtlas right now, and so rebranding would be a whole thing. We're all trying to relearn WCPA right now, so we don't want to throw too much at everybody. But
WDCPA.
yeah, sorry, see, already got it. One of these days. In fact, I talked to someone at IUCN, and she was like, "It's obviously got to be the MCAtlas." So I mean, it could be really easy, who knows? But we do acknowledge that more of these things are coming along, and I think yeah, job security is that there will always be a need to look at quality in these targets, right? And I also pointed out, and I do want to point this out broadly, 30 by 30, the target's really famous. Not everything that people put out there has to be a target 3 thing. There's actually 23 targets in total. And someone asked, are MPAs even going to be effective if things like climate change and all these things? There are other targets to address these other challenges, and no amount of target 3 is alone going to reach what we need to. We have a bunch of other targets they need to be focused on, and they're all equally important to accomplishing the goal. It's an important part of it, but it is not the only tool in the toolbox. There are other targets specifically for that challenge. So we acknowledge it and realize that we're really just focused on a piece of the puzzle.
Okay, thank you. And we actually got a really interesting question from Sybil, but we do not have time for that. So maybe we can look at that
email me.
offline. Yes. No? Okay. Well, thank you guys. This was great. We got through pretty much all the questions. So this was fantastic. Great presentation. We all know a lot more about MPAtlas now. And we look forward to seeing all the future additions and enhancements as well. So thank you to everyone who attended, and go forth and use the MPAtlas for your work.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, and we'll catch you guys, I think, in several months with about.
Yeah, we'll be back with an
further work.
updated portal for how to contribute data, and happy to speak one-on-one with anyone who wants to know more about the behind-the-scenes process. Please come to us. We would love to work with you.
Right. Okay, that's a great way to end. Thanks, everyone, and we'll catch you on future webinars.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.